And okay, so I am calling to order the May 3rd meeting of the Yarmouth Library Planning Committee. And I'll read the statement. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, this meeting will be conducted via remote participation. Specific information such as instructions and guidelines for remote access by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town website. For the public portion of this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or listen and participate in the meeting may do so either by joining by the Zoom link, or you can dial in with the phone number that is on the website. And Jane Kane will be monitoring the chat room in case anybody has a comment. So you can always put any questions or comments in the chat room or under chat if you have something that you'd like to add after we have the public comments.
Linda?
Yes.
It also says that the public can contact me via email at jkane@yarmouth.ma.us.
Oh, thank you, Jane. Okay. So I'll take a roll call vote of the committee to accept this method of the meeting. George Bavino?
Accept.
Myself, I accept. Sue Loveland? Mary Reardon Johnson?
Accept.
Richard Simon?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We decided to start without you. We figured you would be joining us quickly. The next thing would be the public comment. And we have two members of the public, Stephen Singer, and I believe it's Tom Nicanello. And if either of you have something that you would like to say at this point, you're welcome to do it.
Yes, good afternoon. How are you today?
Well, thank you. And you?
Very good, thank you. Yes, my name is Tom Nicanello, and I'd just like to make a comment about our staff person, Jane Kane, at town meeting did a wonderful job in recognizing the importance of our libraries.
Yes, she did.
And I'm hoping the community will rally soon and we can move forward with the wonderful, exciting things that are going to happen in the library department. So that would be my comment. Thank you. Have a good meeting.
Thank you very much. Thank you for attending.
Nicanello.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next thing will be approval of the minutes of the March 29th, 2022 Library Planning Committee meeting. Any comments or questions?
I move to accept.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so I'll take a roll call vote to see if all are in favor of accepting. George Bavino,
Aye.
Linda Callahan, yes. Sue Loveland,
Aye.
Mary Reardon Johnson,
Abstain.
Stephen Singer, oh, sorry. Richard Simon.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll move on to the first item on the agenda. And it was for the, to mention the FAQ document. So Jane, do you want to comment on that? I'm happy to say a little bit about what Bill Scott said to us when we met with him. Do you want to address it first?
I do, but I don't think the other members of the committee ever saw the draft except for you, Linda. Did anybody see the big one, 8.5 by 14? That was a trifold.
Nope.
No.
Well,
No.
I saved you the trouble because it was kind of determined that it was not necessary to have it at town meeting. It wasn't kind of ready for prime time at that point. And so Linda and I worked on a draft and added more questions. And Linda, if you want me to, I will send it to the group, but it'll be outside of this meeting. Or I can put it up on the screen and you can look at it, but I don't know that that's necessary.
Well, I kind of agree with you that it's probably not necessary as part of the meeting. I think ultimately what should come from the meeting is that it was decided not to use it at this point in time because it was not really helpful in the situation for the item that was on the agenda that referred to the library. And in that some of the language might need to be changed moving forward with public information program. So I think that as a piece of information, it could be sent to the members of the committee just so that they are aware of it, but it's strictly draft and it is not something that is going to be used the way it is now. Does that sound fair?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds great. And I think
Does
once you walk us through the meeting with the assistant town administrator, or I can help you walk us through, I think they'll have a better understanding.
It will become evident.
'Cause that was
Okay,
good.
does that-
Bill Scott is very good.
Right. Anybody have any comment about it at this point before you hear the next item? Okay. So let's move to the recap of the meeting with the Assistant Town Administrator, Bill Scott. He was very generous in his time. What date did we meet with him, Jane? I don't have that written down.
We met with him the Thursday or the Friday before town meeting. So April 21 or April 22.
Right.
April
Right.
22.
He gave us at least an hour of his time. We talked, yes, and we talked about primarily about the money that was being asked for the feasibility study. But we also went into this document that we had prepared, and the two things together, by talking about the feasibility study and what the money should be used for in total, it made it that the timing wasn't appropriate for what was in the document at this point in time. So he was the one that convinced us that it would be premature to put it out in this form. Jane, why don't you, I think you were going to go over some notes that you had, why don't you enlighten folks on the committee?
Okay. Okay, let's see. It became clear that he's really done his homework because he explained to us that he had read through the JRA report, which you all know is, dozens and dozens of pages.
Hundreds of pages.
Yeah. Well, that doesn't count all the appendices. He wanted to see more of a room by room study and a focus on individual space needed for different areas. And we replied that to us was more of the building program document, and that document is a separate piece and it's in draft form as it stands now. And you know that Richard and Linda and I have been working on that over the past year and a half. So he said that's good, but he said maybe in this next phase of study, you get a specialist or a building consultant who comes in and holds your hand and walks you through developing a document like that. Richard, like you said, an objective party, one who has library programming experience, not an architect, not a designer, but somebody who focuses on community input, gathering information and synthesizing it to make sense so that you have those talking points to go forward.
There was a hand raised by
Yes.
Mary.
Why did he want to go room by room?
Because those are the documents he's familiar with. Bill has experience in building municipal buildings, and it's the procedure that you follow when you're doing mass municipal construction. And he's actually has some New Hampshire experience too, so it's kind of a New England, their standards for construction. And like we've seen for the MBLC, that's part of the planning and design.
So he wanted to go room by room for the future, or how it exists now?
No, and what they tell me at MBLC is when you write up a building program, you pretend that you don't have a library that exists.
Okay.
You pretend that you're building from the ground up.
Okay, thank you.
So that's how we answered that question that Bill had presented to us, which was that it's part of the next phase, and that kind of thing. He says he also said he still wants to see us focus more on branding the library. He said people need to know the many myriad things that a library does besides cancel books and take in books and do things like that and have children's story time. And he's very good because he gave us some suggestions and we said, well, that's true. So he wants us to think about how we define a modern library for the public.
Can I add to it at this point? I think it fits in that he also was suggesting, and you're probably going to elaborate, but that we go out to different groups in the community to find out what they would like to see the library provide for that members of that particular group. And that would also affect, the size of space. And you could also say what you already do for that group, but they may want more. And that gives you an idea of what you might have to emphasize for space too.
So is he accepting the deficiencies of the current libraries and the need for a new one?
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt. Okay.
But I felt he was not focusing on that at this point to go out to the public with,
Okay.
but to first go positive rather than negative. Would you say that, Jane?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me just go on.
ahead.
So because I am building up to it. No, I'm just kidding.
Building up to the town meeting discussion.
The crescendo.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, so he said, and it was good, like when he starts to think about it, he starts to, get excited about it and talk about it. But he said, think of all the different groups that use your library. And I'm starting to throw out, we have a local writing group who's looking for a meeting room. The DY Newcomers Men's Book Group likes to meet here on Thursday nights. He said school groups, scouting groups, you provide movies to kids on a rainy day. It's after school space for kids that's safe. But then we talk about the walkability issue and that goes off into a side tangent. But I focused on all the technology that we've been providing for folks, training in technology, computer users who are now working from home as the result of the years of pandemic and things like that, so that we really need to focus on our destination as a technology place in town. What is it that we add to the community? What does the library add that you can't get anyplace else but the library? It was pretty cool. So then he said, and I said, well, we have like local condo associations who like to have their meetings here. We have the Beta Sound, that volunteer group who needs a place for training for their volunteers. And he says, I've heard it from other people, there's no meeting space in town. And that's what the library really should be providing because it's a community forum. And it was really kind of cool. So then he said, now, once you've decided, all the different groups that use your library, those become your constituencies and you begin to address their needs individually. And that's how you get consensus so that people agree that we need to do something to change and make the library better.
And I think he focused also on using this money that was being requested at town meeting to really create the documents, create everything that we need to get out to the public, to have somebody that, like you said, Jane, holds our hand to get that done, to accomplish that end. Any comments?
It's about time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And honestly, once town meeting happened and that whole episode was transpiring, it was a little bit rough around the edges and all that, but I love the way that our town administrator kind of explained it to the group in a big umbrella overview that really was particularly on point. It was really good.
I was glad to hear it from that source too, that it can't be pushed aside any longer, that it needs to be out there and dealt with in a good, strong way. And I think him talking about the cost of a consultant, made it obvious that it was something that needed to be done properly. And that you shouldn't be trying to save money doing it, to get it done. Any other comments? If not, we can go on to the next item, which kind of follows along, and Jane alluded to it, the discussion at town meeting, which the end result was that it was a positive vote. And I think it, in some ways, even though it was stressful to get it explained and done, it actually brought it to more people's attention that it was something that, was important to deal with now. And we got someone that stood up to speak and actually was the one that suggested that the amount be lowered. And that person has expressed an interest in becoming involved. And we may get other people that will be interested in becoming involved. So I think in the long run, it was a good thing that it happened the way it happened. It had a good result. I don't know if anybody else was there. I think Richard was at the meeting. I don't know if anybody else was able to
I was not.
attend.
Well, I watched it, but I was not able to be there.
Okay, yeah.
I was certainly there, and I mean, the other piece of it, which I thought was very interesting, was when Will Rubenstein sort of said, and if you don't think that you've been involved, become involved.
Right,
There is a committee, you can be part of it.
yes,
So, I mean, he was very, very vocal proponent of if you want to get involved, get involved. And that was, I thought, also another powerful message.
yes, I agree. So that follows right into the next item. We were actually getting through our agenda pretty quickly. In that the next thing would be discussions of the next steps. And I think that the next steps are pretty clear to us as far as the money would not become available as I understand it until July 1st. But we have to be prepared to hit the ground running. And I would think that what we're going to be working on between now and July 1st is to create the language of the RFP, RFQ, whatever it needs to be called for this particular task.
So there's actually 4 tasks, which
Do you
were
want to
outlined in the
enumerate?
minutes.
Do you want to mention what you were referring to?
Okay, so the 4 tasks are revisiting. So one was facilities assessment, so updating the Johnson Roberts report with any new information, probably modified with the latest recommendations for pandemic considerations. Number 2 was the library building program, and again with a focus on pandemic considerations. And I provided you with at least the Snow Library example, where again they had a third party doing that. Another piece of it would be the site evaluation assessment. So again, the sites which fit the criteria would then be formally evaluated. And then I think the last piece of it is the communications outreach program, if you will, the branding piece of this. So those are the 4, at least I thought, as 4 of the key components. And I would say that each one of those, we basically go back to the town administrator and say, okay, those are the 4 studies. Do you have any other 4 studies you want to do? Let's get procurement to start writing up the RFQs. Again, we don't have to write those. They have to be written by procurement.
What are what's
Go
the
ahead.
site evaluation? Do we have a
What?
site?
We have 4 sites. Well, we have multiple sites. We have 6 sites. So we have the existing sites, plus 3 other possibilities, and you could add more to it. But basically, what you're looking for is the site feasibility analysis, which says these are the ones that fit the criteria, these are the ones that don't. You know, we talked at the last meeting, which you didn't participate in, but the discussion about, for example, the parcel behind the new middle school. And, you know, Will was very articulate in saying, you know, with 850 additional students and parents sort of, you know, landing on Station Avenue, the chances of getting a Station Avenue entrance to that is probably pretty close to 0. Therefore, you're talking about an old townhouse road access, which then, you know, raises the cost and implications of that. So it doesn't mean you cross things off the list. You basically say these are the things that are on the list, and here's the criteria, and you get an outside expert to do that assessment. So it's not our opinion; it's the outside expert, and that's sort of the Bill Scott model.
He definitely did not focus on site in our discussion the other day. He definitely focused more on building your constituency of support for.
Which I understand. I understand that's what
Right.
Yeah, which is important. I mean, that's sort of
Right. And it sounded as though, you know, we'll figure out the most appropriate site once you see the kind of support, the community support and the needs.
right. So I'm not saying that there is. I'm just saying there's 4 pieces to the puzzle. He's going to perhaps focus on piece number 4 as the initial effort,
Okay.
which would be the communications outreach and
Yes.
right.
Yes. That sounded to us, that was his first area that he would focus on. And one of the thoughts that I had also was moving forward, we don't know exactly what the MBLC procedure is going to be for its next grant round, and we don't even know when that's going to be because they haven't finished taking care of the wait list in the last grant round. But there's going to be a cost involved in if they do decide to run it the same way of planning and design 2 years before construction, then there's a process for that, and there's a maximum amount that could be awarded, and there's a match, I believe, on the part of the town. So maybe it's something that we have to be ready to use some of this money for that if things open up sooner rather than later. There's just a few unknowns that we have to deal with, and we don't really know when MBLC is going to be able to come and say to us that there is a grant round. And I think that whole article for the Orleans Library is because they realize that they have needs to improve their facility, and there is so much unknown about the grant, construction grant round from the state, that they're feeling that the town needs to go ahead and make its plans to have it as I don't know if I'm using the appropriate word, but a capital expense or in their building program that the town might have to take it on. So it's something that communities are thinking about, this whole timeline. George.
Can I ask who makes the decision about who the consultants will be and who can give them a timeline for what we expect them to do?
Jane, do you want to?
Sure. I would think that it's this membership who would make a determination on how to pick a consultant and then interview them, similar to what we did when we were the study committee and we had the facilities assessment back in 2016 and 17, or 17 and 18.
There are procurement issues though, Jane.
Oh, I know, and you tell me that procurement writes the RFP, but I know that we wrote it and Svetlana approved it.
Right. So, but I'm just saying it has to go through that process.
Oh yeah.
So are we bound to the least amount of money here from a
From a bid
consultant?
standpoint,
Yes.
Yep. Massachusetts Municipal Construction.
Right. right. I understand that.
And prevailing wage and everything too, right?
Right.
Right.
And I mean, there are ways to work within that system and still get what you want. You just have to know what you're doing.
Well, and
Well,
I
and-
think one of the things I learned from Bill Scott was also entities which are which are state entities. So, for example, the Collins Center, which is a UMass Dartmouth organization. Amherst.
But they're all UMass.
Yeah, they're all part of, so any consultant that is part of a state system is not required to do the bidding process. So if you find an appropriate consultant who is part of the UMass system, you can just move forward with them without any additional bidding process.
Well, with our last, in the study committee, we did have some other people from the town that were on our committee once the RFPs or RFQs were submitted to review the applications. So it was in addition to the people on the planning or the study committee, we had, if I remember correctly, Jeff Colby, and I've forgotten who else.
So when are these RFPs going out?
They can't go out until after the funding is approved, so July would be the earliest.
We have to
So
write
July.
it first.
So July.
Right.
Okay.
Linda, that's what you said when we were going to town meeting, is you said we would have this time frame between now and July 1 to start drafting these kind of documents.
That's what it seems like. That would be our next step. I don't think we can, it doesn't seem to me that we can do anything else with any definitive answers, except the wording of the RFQ. I mean, it's premature to really ask a lot of questions about possible sites other than what we already know and keep them in mind. And as we've said all along, that nothing is really off the table and things may all of a sudden, new things could be added to the mix that we're not aware of now. So it seems like the best use of our time would be to prepare the language of the RFQ. Now, I don't know if we have to talk with Bill and say, okay, do you want us to start? Do you start? What is the timeline between now and July 1st?
It would save a lot of anxiety if you had clear direction from Mr. Scott.
I would think so.
Can I interrupt just to say,
Please.
this RFQ is for what?
So there's four potential pieces.
I see, I know, I have that.
Bill Scott would favor sort of
Yep,
the focus on the communications and outreach piece of it. At least for the
want an
first
RFQ for a survey?
well, that's now we're getting into to me, that would be potentially a piece of it, but that would not necessarily be the only piece of it. Again, so I go back to one of the things that Mary has often said is, just give me the roadmap, give me the outline, and and we'll work on this stuff. And I think that's sort of the thought here is, at least to me, is so Bill is a big believer in having third-party consultants, expert third-party consultants, provide the framework that we would use to do this. So we would be looking for, in my mind, somebody who's done exactly this process, potentially with Snow Library or Norwell or anybody else, and would sort of be the consultant to help work through that detailed plan, including whether it was surveys, focus groups, fill in the blank.
Listening sessions, coffees.
Okay, so
Go ahead, Sue.
in reading the minutes from the last meeting, and talking and reading about, is it the Snow Library that I read
Yes.
about?
Yes.
Orleans.
There was some very complimentary information about a particular person who led them through? And is this what we are looking for?
Yes,
So
exactly.
we're gonna make an RFQ for a person like that,
Mhm.
who is then gonna help us go through these 4 things.
Right.
The building,
one-
the building program and outreach, mostly. Those
That's
two
what I
things.
would think too. Yes.
Okay, all right.
Jane, do you agree that those would be?
I agree completely. Think back, Sue, I don't know if you were involved in the early study committee, but I think you were in the very
Yes.
beginning.
It was
Yes.
there.
We contacted a husband and wife team who are library consultants, and they had just worked with one of the libraries in Central Mass. And we contacted them to see if they were interested in working with us. You know, it didn't work out at the time, but that's exactly what they do. They take you from soup to nuts through the planning stage.
So what really saying,
Mary,
yes,
hold on, Sue.
Don't we need to get a price on what it will cost to get the update on the facility to include today's numbers and the pandemic? That seems to be one thing, and that seems to be relatively easy to get that number from them. And then the site evaluation, we're saying we can put on hold. So we're looking for someone to deal with the outreach and the library program. Am I hearing that correctly?
That's what I think. Yeah,
Okay. So
those
that,
two.
so, I mean, is it relatively easy for those of you, I guess I'm talking about Jane and Linda, who have spoken on an ongoing basis regarding the study, how much it would cost to update it?
I don't think it's going to be difficult to get that figure. And
Okay.
I don't think it's going to be difficult to figure out how much a library a library project consultant does. I'll just call Tavi and ask him what he paid.
Well, let's get that so we can, check these things off and know how much we have to spend for the fun part, which is, the outreach and the map on how to go forward. The other seems like a little catch up for me, which makes sense that we have that information. But the new one is the number 4 of Richard's outline.
Meaning site? He put site at number 4.
Oh,
No?
no. I
Communication.
had facilities, library program, site evaluation, and outreach.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Yeah.
I
Any-
want to remind folks that given that it's now 2022, we've had 2.5 years of pandemic. There's a boatload of information available on the effects of a library, a public library, and all that sort of stuff. But in addition to that, it's time for the library to do its next 5-year strategic plan and have that on file with MBLC. And in creating a strategic plan, if you recall, we had those listening sessions and we had surveys and we had print surveys available and things like that. Now that we have Richard, we can make sure that those are random surveys, more so than, the typical surveys that you see in town. And I think it goes together well this year, that we'll be rolling along and getting lots of input from folks on a ton of different topics. And, the future is one of those topics. I'm psyched.
sounds good.
So one of the things that all of this discussion brings to mind to me is the practical thing of trying to get meetings scheduled and the need for meetings. And I'm wondering if this is the time to, since the next item would be next meeting, to talk about how frequently we might think we need to meet at this point.
Linda, I'm just going to interrupt
Please.
quickly to say, please, all of you remember the library board is also very willing to assist in anything that we decide to do.
Thank you for
And
saying that.
Would be thrilled.
And we're counting We're
And I-
definitely counting on that. Yes,
And I would also say that, again, Linda, that the last time you came to the library board and brought all those folks up to date was truly very, very important. And I would say that now that we have perhaps this $50,000, it's time to re-up these folks again and let us know,
okay,
you know, what's going on and again, how we can help. And I think that's
Sure.
really, really important.
sure. Something that Richard has mentioned before is the whole thing about chair and vice chair and secretary of the different committees, and that I don't know exactly how that is going to be handled this year because there's a new person doing it. We had Mr. Horgan before. And I'm not sure exactly the time frame. So just be thinking about that is going to be coming up and we're going to have to make some decisions going forward. I'll just leave it at that. As far as meetings, how do you feel about, for instance, we're in May. How do you feel about a meeting in June? Also, you know, going through the summer, the need for one and what should be our goal between now and the beginning of July.
I think a meeting in June would be appropriate. I really do.
And a lot of this work is not done in the meeting. I mean,
True.
we're not gonna sit down and write an RFQ in a meeting.
You're right.
No. It's more,
Well,
it's,
subcommittees,
the
right?
meetings are a useful touch point for us to make sure that we are all sort of moving in the same direction. So it's, are we all rowing in the same direction? As Mary noted, you know, she abstained from the minutes last week because we covered a lot of ground. And you need to, I think it's important to stay regular.
Mhm.
Okay,
Me too, me too.
okay.
Agreed.
Mary? Are you in agreement? I'm gonna put you on. Are you in agreement with that feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Okay. And this is our first meeting at 5:30. Does that work out better? And also it being, I think we went to the first Tuesday of the month. Is that how we changed it?
Correct.
And do we want to stay with that?
I think that
Sure,
works.
this works out fine. This works
Sure.
out fine. And if
And,
that works out good with Will, that's even better.
And I think with Will, it's going to be, you know, from week by week, because I think he doesn't find these things out until sometimes the last minute. So,
Well, isn't he busy in the summer?
well, he's got a new job, so that I think dictates what his schedule is too, as far as the job.
Okay.
He's now involved with the Animal Rescue League.
Right. So I think he has a little bit more of a schedule that is, you know, imposed on him rather than one that he can make himself completely. But he has not indicated that, you know, that he does not want to stay involved. So I'm hoping that we can work it out.
He wants to stay involved very much.
Right.
So June 6th at 5:30.
June 6th?
Yep, good.
June
Okay.
7th is a Tuesday.
Oh, 7th, I'm sorry, 7th.
Oh, you're at SYLA, Richard.
Oh,
I know, we're Mondays. All right, so, does anybody have any,
No,
Go ahead,
June what? June 7th or?
7th, which would be
June
the
7th,
that'll be the first Tuesday.
7 at 5:30?
Very good.
And anything else that anybody wants to mention before we,
Do you think it would be possible for us to get what the cost would be to update our facilities?
I think that we can keep you informed with pieces of information between now and next meeting and just not have any deliberation on it, but just as, you know, information. I don't think that should be a problem.
Well, I'm just anxious to get to how much money we will have
Right.
for the new
Right.
part.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think a conversation with Bill Scott would be what we'd need to do to get that.
Well,
Okay.
again, no, so what Mary is saying is we need to call Johnson, you know,
That,
Johnson Roberts, to get sort of their estimate of how much it would cost to update their piece of it. And then the library building program would be another piece of it, and then that would leave the communications piece.
So is that something that we can make that call, or that does the town have to make that call?
Johnson Roberts, that's an existing contract with Johnson Roberts. I believe they have an extended agreement. The library building program would be if outsourced, would be a different piece. It would be zero
Right.
if we do it
Right.
ourselves, but it would be a cost if somebody else did it.
So you're saying that somewhere in the language of the contract with Johnson Roberts, it would say that?
Yes.
And
Well-
and is that, Jane, do you have that contract?
I do. I'll dig it out.
So you could find out that piece as
Yep.
to what our
I
avenue
looked-
has
I
to be.
think, Richard, you mentioned it before and I looked it up.
Right.
So in preparation for over the next month, we should we be thinking about what kind of skills, what kind of folks, what kind of resources we would look at for a consultant to do the outreach?
Yeah, I'm going to give you two sources. One is what Richard sent out yesterday, which was that update about Orleans, which was amazing and fantastic. And the other is what it says on the MBLC site, but like Linda alluded to or said directly, is that that's in motion. That's going to change, but at least it gives you some general guidelines about, they've been doing it for 30 years, 40 years. They know what the history is.
Are you saying that you like that particular person?
I don't know her, but I was very impressed by the credentials. Did you see it?
Yes.
She has a library degree. She has like a Cornell degree or something, or Columbia. I mean, and she's been in business for 39 years. I'm pretty much think she's good.
So should we be contacting her to find out how much she charges?
No, we're going to do an RFQ. We have to do it that way.
Do you remember exact date when that was written?
No,
Yeah.
but it's on the Snow website.
It's
I know.
2019. It was 3 years ago.
3 years ago. That's what I'm wondering if that person is still actively working. Just curious.
No, I hear you. I didn't realize it was 3 years ago.
Right.
That's the worry. I mean, if this, well, anyway, I don't want to go into it, but I mean,
Well, I would be curious to find out what the cost was too,
sure.
3 years ago.
Can you-
Jane should be able to call the Orleans folks and get what they paid per.
Okay, yes?
Jane?
What?
So you should call the Orleans library director and see how much they paid that woman.
That's what I'm gonna do. His name is Tavi. He's a great guy.
Great.
And
Okay.
what about some of the other libraries that have gone through the process? Is Brewster on the waiting list?
They are.
And so they would have been gone through the process that we're going through. Did they?
Their grant was awarded in 2017.
Right.
So that's 5 years ago. And I bet you they did their study 4 years before that grant was awarded. And again, it's almost a decade ago. It's
Right.
It's
So-
mind blowing.
So for by the next meeting, Jane, you can get some numbers on what folks have paid for these types of things?
I certainly can. The library directors who've been through this project are the best at sharing all this stuff.
Wonderful,
And I've
wonderful.
gone through it. Westboro is on the line now. They're like third on the list and they're going to start their project. And I know Maureen in Westboro for years.
Right. And you also met recently with Norwell and
Yeah.
Weymouth?
And
Yes.
Weymouth, and they
Another
said the
2 more
minute you guys
resources.
need any information, just holler, no matter how small the question. It was really wonderful.
Well,
Would
I'd be curious to see if we have enough money, which would be thrilling,
Yeah.
to go ahead and get at least, 2 or 3 of these things checked off. That would be
Checked off,
wonderful.
yeah. Definitely.
Would it be smart to ask all of these people who they used and who they liked, as well as what they paid, so that when we do get to July, we are ready to begin to interview people immediately, not you know, 3 months later.
We
Ask
have to publicize it, don't you? We have to publicize it.
RFQ. Ask for their RFQ.
That's
I
true.
have some from a couple years ago, you know, when we
No,
were
but-
doing this.
But
Wonderful.
Mary is saying specifically for this type of work, not general, but this type of work specifically.
Right.
And I think that's what we're gonna get from Tavi's consultant. And he probably has, you know, his RFQ and all the notes from all the meetings and all that stuff. He's very well aware of it.
So Linda, is our process at the next meeting, hopefully we'll have some of this information, and that would be to synthesize what we want or what we agree with, and then run that by our new best friend, Mr. Scott?
I would think so. I mean, it certainly couldn't hurt to try that approach.
Well, I mean, the more back, so remember, Mr. Scott is bandwidth bound. Everything is, he is so time constrained. In fact, whenever he gives you time, that's a amazing thing because he is so time constrained. So the more complete you can present the data to
Yes,
him, very data-driven guy,
yes,
the faster things will move.
right.
Oh, I just want to make sure that we're on the right track as far as he's concerned. I would hate to have us say, here's who we're excited about, and go and then him say, that's not at all what I was thinking about. So
Well,
I'm
it seems to me we have 2 months. So I think if we're going to have a meeting in June, then we use the first month to put it the way we think we want it and run it by him. Hopefully he can give us some response to it. And then if we have to make changes,
Yeah.
then we have, you know, June to do that.
great.
Does that make sense? Is that what you're saying, Mary?
Yes, yes, it is. That would be delightful.
Well,
In
and in
fact-
an ideal world, Linda, we're gonna have our RFQ ready to post mid-June. Like Susan said, she wants to be ready to jump on
Yes.
interviews in July.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
we'll get them at the beach.
yes. Oh, but whatever, I mean, use these next 2 months to get, so that we can hit the ground running
Great.
after
Yes,
July 1st.
yes.
Okay,
Can
Well-
can I have a minute of your time?
please.
You can have
I
two.
want you to think about this. I had a conversation this week, believe it or not, following the town meeting, with someone who feels pretty strongly that it's going to be a 2-library solution. So perhaps we will get a grant for new construction in the center of town, but we really need to know exact figures on upgrading the existing facilities. Does that strike you as something that we should button up? In other words, do I need to go out and get contractor estimates on repairing West Yarmouth Library or South Yarmouth Library?
We
I
have
think,
those.
No, I
Yeah,
only have like the umbrella ones. Like
Relative
specific
cost.
numbers.
Mary, you're shaking your head?
I mean, are we going to go out and get numbers for everybody who has an issue? I think there's, are we talking about Mark Forrest?
well, whomever we're talking about, it's the question really becomes, and I go back to the Weymouth example, where again, they started off with 4, they consolidated, they built new, and then magically 2 got closed. So sometimes you don't have to fight the battle right off the bat. You just sort of,
Oh, I see what you're saying. I mean,
And-
if after we build the new library, if someone wants to raise money to keep another one open, God love them.
I love them.
Well, and I would also think that this would become part of the public outreach conversation.
That's a good point, Linda.
That we wouldn't make that decision getting those numbers now, because in actuality, nothing would happen for a while anyway. And I would think that that would be part of, you know, what if we did this and what if we did that? And then if there's
Sure.
enough support behind it, it could be that just in allowing the thought to be spoken out loud, then people start thinking about it one way or the other, and then maybe it's like, well, yeah, that doesn't make sense, so maybe we don't do that. I mean, you have to have the conversation.
Well,
So
if they
the
want to
other,
be like
the other
Yarmouth,
thing that came up at town meeting, which was very interesting, was the Yarmouth Port contingent saying, we would like to get in on this because we need a lot of renovations to our place.
well, they made their decision. Yeah.
But again, I think they need to be heard, because if you
Right.
don't hear them, then it's just undercurrent, and that doesn't help the situation.
Right.
So I think everything needs to be on the table,
Right.
and we've got to be able to have answers and allow it to be said. Otherwise,
Right, you don't want to stifle the conversation, but it's, you know, again, and anybody, you know, this town has done some weird things. If you want to raise taxes, go right ahead. I mean, that's sort of what it boils down to is how are you going to apply your scarce resources?
yep. Yes, exactly. You can want all, all you want, but you have to figure out how you're going to pay for it. So, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Right.
So I think we've aired our feelings on that, and I think it's healthy that we did. Are we ready to adjourn?
We are. I might make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Roll
And-
call vote.
Do we have a second?
I
And do
do.
we need a roll call, Richard?
We do Zoom meetings, roll call, everything.
Sue, do you agree?
Yes.
And I agree. And Mary
Yes.
and George
I,
and Richard?
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone, for your participation
thank you.
and patience.
And
Like I
let-
said, I mean,
Need
I'm
somebody to
more encouraged than ever,
think
so I'm very
available.
positive. Jane, make sure that you post that video as soon as possible.
Did you look
Right.
at the last one?
Everyone gets posted quickly. We're going to be the poster children for public transparency.
Absolutely. We are going to be compliant. Goodbye,
Thank you.
everyone.
All right,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.